EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a special 10 a.m. edition here to kick off the week on a Monday edition of Birds 365. Welcome in. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen. John, a little later start today, but we're here like always for a 2-hour show. How you doing on this Monday morning, brother?
Getting through. Appreciate everybody sticking around. Had to back things up a little this morning, but right back into it. Another OTA week. Eagles will be on the field today, tomorrow, Thursday. The big playground build, the annual playground build is Wednesday. So a lot of things happening on Eagles land, but the headliners, obviously, Bryce Huff.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, John, Bryce Huff deal broke Friday after our show. We did have a little bit of a segment on Friday, but not much to talk about it. We'll kind of dive into that this morning. We will give the clarification on that. I said to John pre-show, there was a little bit of fake news around the Bryce Huff deal. So we'll clarify and give you the truth here on Birds 365 of what that deal meant and what the ramifications, both good and bad, are for that. The business of June 1, everybody. It's June 2nd today. For those who are unaware, hope everybody had a good start to their June. I can't believe it's already June, but June 1 is a big day in the NFL world. As John wrote on Sports Illustrated, it's a demarcation line. John, June 1 has officially passed. What does that mean for the Eagles when that comes to mind? Just to give everybody just a brief, what to expect now post June 1 for the Birds?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of misinformation, as you mentioned, with not only Bryce Huff, but also Darius Slay and James Bradberry, because they were the two post June 1st designations for the Eagles as sort of salary cap casualties. Number one, I think a lot of people don't understand. Well, you make those moves early, and sometimes you do it as a favor to the players and let them get an early shot at free agency. With Slay, obviously, he's able to get a big deal with Pittsburgh, and he did a lot for this team, so that's part of it. And then the standpoint of just the raw numbers, I think, what's most misunderstood is you'll see the Eagles got whatever, it was about $6.2 or $6.3 million in cap space, which is technically true. Got about 4.3, I think, for Slay, 2.1 for Bradberry. Now, the problem is they have what's called the top 51 rule in the offseason. So the top 51 salaries, cap salaries, count against the cap in the offseason, and you have to be cap compliant at all times. So as Slay and Bradberry drop off today, that means two players, numbers 52 and 53, are elevated. And number 52 and 53 on the Eagles now are Moro Ajomo, who's got a cap number of $1.049 million. Anaya Smith, $1.043 million. So basically, when you're talking about effective cap space, you have to add the savings of Slay and Bradberry, and then take off Ajomo and Smith's numbers. So it's more like essentially it's Slay's number. You're getting more like 4.2, 4.3 million of cap space. And I think a lot of people don't get that back end. Anytime you lose two that are in the top 51, two get elevated. So now 53, for instance, is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So if they do something else, and they will be doing something else, they'll be trading Bryce Huff, it'll likely be finalized today. Trotter goes up as well. So the same thing happens there with the cap savings.
A lot of moving parts, John, on that.
Yeah. So again, the Eagles are very good with the cap. You know what? I hesitate to say, don't worry about it versus try to educate as many people as possible. But you do have to remember the back end of the top 51 cutoff. So when someone says they saved 4 point whatever million, well, no, they didn't. They saved the difference between the Slay number and the elevation number of that guy at the back end of the roster, if that makes sense. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, it's a little confusing, but it makes some sense. The whole thing is confusing in the NFL world. John, I want to move into, and you mentioned him there, but I do want to talk about Bryce Huff. All right, we didn't have a chance to kind of lay it out fully on Birds 365, so I want to get clarification. I want to get your thoughts on the deal. I want to get your thoughts on the edge rusher room post Bryce Huff, what it means for the Birds. Are they going to look to acquire somebody? Does it mean Jahad Campbell is not playing off-ball linebacker? We'll talk about some of those things. Let me hit the super chat. We're starting the week off good from Jason A-Team here, and the super chat's about Bryce Huff, so we'll go right to it. Jason A-Team, $50. Wow, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Morning, JAKIB fan. J-Mac and Z, Howie is elite. Starting my vacation week off right with Bryce Huff gone. Eagles fans celebrated all weekend. I will be celebrating even more. Does this give us a chance for another player somewhere? Thank you for the super chat, A-Team. He was partying all weekend, John, at the departure of Bryce Huff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm the guy who got shat on for years, telling a lot of Eagles fans that Howie Roseman was one of the best GMs in football. So, yeah, I'm on the ground floor of that. This is not, his crowning moment. This is not where you, as I explained, you should be giving Howie Roseman his flowers. This is a nice sort of recovery from a bad decision. This is not, there will be plenty of opportunities where you will get to say, hey, that's a good move by Howie Roseman. This is not, he's paying Bryce Huff $9 million to go play for the San Francisco 49ers. That's what's happened. That's what happened. And he got a middling asset and about $2.4 million of cap relief for $9 million. This is not the crowning achievement of Howie Roseman. This is the rare mistake of Howie Roseman. And it has to do more with evaluation. As I said, it's not a Bryce Johnston mistake because the contract is at a point where you can get out of it without terrible difficulties because of the way they manipulate roster bonuses versus base salaries. So essentially they're paying $9 million of what's guaranteed to Huff this season. San Francisco's paying $7.75 million. So the 49ers, and that's another thing. Remember, yeah, they're coming off a bad season, but they had a crap load of injuries. What happens if the 49ers turn into a contender again, which is not crazy? And all of a sudden, Bryce Huff is back with the guy who made him a $17 million player because Robert Saleh is back in San Francisco. And he's going to use Bryce Huff in the way Bryce Huff is comfortable with versus the way he was used here, which is, a more what was being asked of him was be a more well-rounded player, set the edge, drop in coverage, rush the passer, and he couldn't do it. And Vic made that assessment, and the Eagles went in a different direction. But make no mistake about it, Jason. They're paying this guy $9 million to play for the San Francisco 49ers. This is not the crowning achievement of Howie Roseman. This is the rare mistake of Howie Roseman.
Well, good recovery for Howie, but good context there from Johnny Mac. We're going to dive into that some more here. John, I do want to touch on real quick just what the update for today for the Eagles is. They have OTAs this week. Alfredo checks in. He says no reporters at OTAs today. That's correct, Alfredo. No reporters at OTAs today. I believe it'll be tomorrow, John, that you guys have access to the OTA.
Yeah, most likely 99%. But
not confirmed, as you can tell, but should be tomorrow. So they're today, they're tomorrow, and then what's their other day this week, John? Thursday? They're off Wednesday?
Thursday.
Okay, so they're off Wednesday and Friday.
They're doing a charity thing. They do that playground build every year.
That's right.
And they're doing that on Wednesday.
Yep, so that's the update for the week. John, I want to dive back into Bryce Huff there. John, and before I get your take on just kind of what the football ramifications outside of the money ramifications of it, of moving on from Bryce Huff, it was originally talked about and reported that they cleared up $15 million of cap space. That's what Field Yates put out. A lot of people ran with it. I ran with it. I thought that was the truth when I saw a guy like Field Yates put it out. Is that not the truth? Bring clarity to what that means, because many people saw that $15 million cap space savings number for this year. And I, me included, I fell for it. I took the bait. Was I wrong to take that bait? Bring clarity to that, please, Joe.
Yeah, they're not getting 15 million in cap space. And Field is very good. He's just misinterpreted the contract and what the Eagles do. And part of the reason, because they turn, again, one of the reasons they do what they do is to lower salary cap numbers early on in the process. They do that by creating roster bonuses instead of base salary. So in essence, when Bryce Huff signed, his salary was very minimal in year 2, but he had this massive roster bonus. And to facilitate the trade, the Eagles turned that roster bonus in the base salary, restructured the deal, which obviously Bryce Huff was okay with because he was getting out of here. And by doing that, they could split it. Eagles paying a little bit more, 9.05 million per the 7.75 million, I believe, of San Francisco. So they're sort of splitting that 17 million. And then essentially, it was structured as a 2-year deal anyway, as most contracts are with the Eagles. And so essentially San Francisco gets a 3rd-year $17 million option on Bryce Huff, which they're unlikely to pick up, to say the least. But from the standpoint of the cap savings, yeah, he just misunderstood it, and it's really far less. And I think everyone sort of opened their eyes and said, wow, that's when all the flowers started to come in for Howie. And it just wasn't true. So they get minimal cap relief, 2.3 or 2.4 million. And they get rid of the player and they get a mid-round pick. My guess is it's going to be 5th round. We'll see as it becomes official. Maybe they can get a condition on it. I doubt it. But we'll see how that shakes out. But he wasn't a fit for Vic Fangio. And you can go the James Bradbury route, or you can go what they did, the way they did. It is sort of breaking protocol for the Eagles to pay for someone else to play for someone else, but that's the penalty for a misevaluation of a big contract.
So much less than the 15 million that we originally thought. As John pointed out, they're just a little over 2.5 million. It sounds like. John, what does that mean cap wise? Do you think they will make a move off this, or is this simply they wanted to get Bryce Huff off the books? They found a team willing to tango. It takes 2 to tango, and they moved him off the books. Here is that all you think this is?
Yeah, it's more about Huff, getting Huff off the books, and making the best of a poor situation from that standpoint. Because again, he wasn't in the plans of Vic Fangio, so yeah, it's not about and I think that happens too often. One move. And again, the Eagles think about cap stuff in 3-year increments. So, I get everybody's about immediacy and everybody's thinking right now. Everybody's thinking Trey Hendrickson, yada, yada, yada. It's never about just, we're doing this because we're going to do this. I shouldn't say never, but it's very rarely about that. In this instance, it's not about adding it to, they're not doing this to add another player. Now, that doesn't preclude them, as I've said, as you go through the off season, and probably, June 10th is minicamp next week. Vic will make the assessment. Do I have enough? And if he says no, they'll look in other directions. It's probably still not going to be a Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt type. But desperation fuels different things, but I find it hard to believe that this team is going to be desperate. So would they add a veteran piece that's more accomplished? Potentially. It's not going to be a $30 million player. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Myles Garrett clickbait stuff. Howie said it, we're just not in a financial position to do that. Of course, they want them. They want everybody. They want every good player. But right now, they're not in a financial position. They're not in a financial position to get Trey Hendrickson or TJ Watt at $30 million plus dollars. Could they add somebody lesser? Sure.
I don't
they
know what a
probably
guy
should.
lesser would be, right? Like, I mean, we are June 2nd. You know, how many guys are out there that are kind of the middle of the road?
Well, there's,
don't
I
know.
mean, if you think about where the Eagles are, and they're obviously a legit Super Bowl contender, the disrespectful nature of the national media, PFF rated them still as the best roster in football last week. So the Super Bowl window is open. And that's when, in theory, potentially you'd want to go after maybe a guy who can get you over the top, a Von Miller type, for instance, who's older, and typically you would say, well, no, the Eagles don't want that type of player. But in this instance, when they're so close, Jadeveon Clowney's out there, I believe. There's not a lot of guys, but there are guys who could help. And then you have the trade route, the first time the CJ route. So, maybe there's a ascending player who's blocked somewhere else and you're willing to go the trade route to get them that way. So, in-house, I think it's more about Zach Baun and Jahad Campbell, and sort of a different type of philosophy and different type of role, which I wrote about on SI.com. Like, I think Eagles fans are hyper focused because that's all they've seen. Wide nine, go rush the passer, Jim Schwartz going all the way back to Jim Washburn. Wide nine, which is a technique, not a scheme, by the way. And everybody uses it, and the Eagles will still use it at times. But it's of much less importance with Vic Fangio. And you might have to start thinking about some more unconventional ways of getting edge rushing here. And that's, to have two linebackers like Zach Baun and Jahad Campbell, one proven, one projection, but very talented. The whole philosophy with Vic Fangio's defensive scheme is to make the quarterback sort of hesitate post snap, just a little tick, try to figure out what's going on. Different coverages, different rushes, who's rushing, who's not rushing. So maybe you use Zach Baun and Jahad Campbell when he's healthy as sort of interchangeable parts. And if you think about what Vic wants, coverage players, they can cover, but they can also rush. Maybe goes about it that way. And if you're a quarterback thinking, all right, who's coming on this play? Is it Baun or is it Campbell? And the other one drops. So you might cause some of that confusion. And then you might have to play Jalen Carter outside on occasion a little bit more. Or you can cross your fingers and hope Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche, find their highest points when Josh was, his 11th sack season, or maybe Azeez can stay healthy and play 17 games. And maybe that works out. Maybe Jalix Hunt turns into a star in year 2. Maybe that works out. But I think they have enough avenues to where you can at least project some improvements, that they won't be desperate. But man, if Vic walks into Howie's office and says, yeah, this ain't good enough, that's going to carry a lot of weight.
Yeah. We're going to see what they end up doing there. A lot of moving parts now, John, at the edge after Bryce Huff is gone now. I don't think we all expected Bryce to be a big part of it, but it certainly does open up a lot of questions, as you just kind of touched on, with a lot of different players, Jahad Campbell and Vaughn and all those different moving parts. The other thing, going back to the Bryce Huff contract, is does it kind of open up any leeway, John, for extensions for guys that are, now? I'm talking Jordan Davis. I'm talking Reed Blankenship. I'm talking some of those guys. Maybe the business in-house becomes a little easier getting that contract off the books. Do you see that at all?
Yeah, a little bit. They got a little bit of money back. So they've been very focused on cash over cap for getting ready for, and it already started with Cam Jurgens. But next year with Jalen Carter, obviously, is imposed. That's the imposing one. And potentially Nolan Smith as well. And then down the road, you have Cooper and Quinyon 2 years down the road. So that's when I talk about, it's not about immediacy. It's a longer term plan. And certainly those guys are in it. Short term, Reed's the next guy. I'm a little surprised he's not done already. And yeah, that should help a little bit when it comes to getting him done, which it'll get done. Just a matter of when.
Yeah. John, what's your prediction on what they end up doing here at the edge rusher room? Because it's a big hole. I mean, you got bodies there, but there's a lot of projection on a lot of fronts, whether you have the guys in the room playing that position, whether you have Campbell playing that position. I mean, there's a lot of question marks there. What would you do if you were Howie Roseman for this room?
Well, I think I would personally, I'd be more comfortable with a more proven commodity. But I think the Eagles are confident in Vic and Jeremiah Washburn and their developmental process. And there's enough avenues that one or two, I think, from their philosophy, not that every single one of them is going to hit, but that one or two might hit. And then all of a sudden you're fine. So I think they're going to stay that route. But yeah, I'd be more comfortable with a more proven commodity. But it is a 36-year-old edge rusher or a the best journeyman in the history of football, Jadeveon Clowney, because he's a good player, but he moves around from year to year to year. Is that better than a young kid who's getting better, and Jalix Hunt, who's cheap? I don't know. I don't think it is. So, the easy thing is, if you get a future Hall of Famer like TJ Watt, well, I mean, I just don't think that's realistic. I don't think Trey Hendrickson is realistic.
What about a guy like a Trayvon Walker? I know they picked up the 5th-year option, or somebody like that in that category. Is that too close to a deal too? Because if you trade for him, you're probably going to have to put the big contract on the end of it too.
Exactly. Well, and plus, I've never understood, other than Jacksonville's not a very good organization, why they would want to move on from Trayvon Walker. I never understood that. So
he's had double-digit sacks, I think, twice in 3 years, right?
Yeah. Still, it's funny that's a disappointment because he was the number 1 overall pick. That's the only reason that's a disappointment. But yeah, I never understood that because that was brought up earlier in the offseason. Well, Jacksonville might trade Trayvon Walker. And I said on the show, I said, why? He's still under contract. Why are they going to trade him? Other than they're just dumb. Sorry, Tony Khan, but they're not that dumb. And they picked up his option, and yeah, I just don't see him as a viable avenue. Would I like him? Yeah, sure.
Sounds like slim pickings that are out there, John. I mean, it's not like there's a bunch of options here. It's almost like if the guys you have in the room don't work out well, there's a good chance that this is an issue.
Well, there's always guys. Now the problem is, and I can do some research. maybe that'll be my project this week to find that guy, the CJ Gardner-Johnson guy. Now, the Eagles needed a safety at the time. CJ was playing nickelback for New Orleans. Nobody projected CJ Gardner-Johnson to be a safety at the time. And the Eagles traded for him, and it worked out well for 1 year, traded him. He signed elsewhere because he balked at the offer, brought him back, worked out again, traded him. But when he was here, I think everybody acknowledges, a little bit high maintenance, but he produced at a high level. And my point being, all the way back to the trade, nobody had CJ on their radar. That's why they have a pro personnel department to unearth these kind of guys who are, maybe they're in their current situation, entering their final year of their rookie contract, and that team knows, well, we're not going to bring him back because he's blocked here. So, might be a name we're not thinking about, other than the constant big names, which are obviously on the forefront of most people's minds. And when you talk about Hendrickson because he's upset with his contract, and you talk about Watt because he's upset with his contract, well, they're not going to magically not be upset with their contract to play with Philadelphia. Maybe it's a little bit better because it's a legitimate Super Bowl contender, but they want to get paid what they think their value is, which is $30+ million. In the case of Walker, a big name, but a lesser big name, but a big name. Again, it doesn't make sense from Jacksonville's standpoint. Unless you want to give them a first-round pick, maybe they'll think about it.
It's going to be a big issue unless the guys that are in the room step up and do what Vic Fangio needs them to do. Or else I don't see the solution being outside the locker room right now to come in and just fix this. I don't see it. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's not as big of an issue as we're making it out to be on Birds 365. Maybe the edge rushing crew is not as bad.
Well,
as
it's not proven. It's not proven.
Right. Well, last year's linebacker room, again, that's more of an exception than the rule, but still exists. So maybe there's a little bit of that going on here, but I get flashes to like 2023 where you go into the season uncertain at safety, then you try and make a trade for a Kevin Byard late in the year and it just doesn't work, falls flat on your face. Now, I'm not saying this is the same situation, but it's not that easy to fix a position late in the year. It's not.
No, certainly later. I mean, in season, it's really difficult. I mean, there's a difference between, to me, trading for somebody in training camp where you at least, or even at the initial cut down, like they got CJ, and then you have a whole season to kind of figure it out versus, trade deadline, Kevin Byard type move. That's difficult. And it generally doesn't turn out to be that big of a deal, but, and Kevin played pretty well last season with a bad team, but played pretty well individually. And if he had a whole training camp and off season, who knows how it would have worked. Although, Sean Desai probably not ready to be a defensive coordinator. I think it's fair to say that. So that factored into it as well. So a lot of things, but yeah, I think, they're going to roll the dice with what they have. And but look, there's no demonstrated performance and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Do you think they are worse off after the Bryce Huff trade, football wise?
Well, yes and no. Yes, from the standpoint of, look, I think he's their, at worst, second best pure pass rusher. And by the way, and I know people balk at that. Don't listen to me. Listen to Brandon Graham. He was on Ross Tucker's podcast. Listen to that interview. Brandon explains it, and that comes from more heft than me. It's a wide nine guy. And he flat out said, I know he can rush. And that's what Howie said. But that's all he can do. And Vic's not going to use that type of player. Just doesn't like it. That's a little bit closed-minded in my estimation. I rarely criticize Vic Fangio, but that's a little bit closed-minded. I understand wanting, of course, I'd rather have a more well-rounded player. Of course, everybody would. But you have to use what you have until you get that player. And maybe Jahad Campbell turns out to be that player.
Is Vic Fangio supposed to speak this week?
We don't have the schedule yet, but yeah, he should be.
Would you presume that he will?
I presume that he will, yes. And he'll
Curious to hear, yeah.
He's very honest. But you saw it early in training camp. Is like, Vic, he's not going to throw people under the bus, but he was very clear that he was not happy with the way Bryce Huff was progressing as a 3-down player. Now, also, I think the injuries were a big part of it. And I get frustrated when people ignore them. The guy did have surgery on his wrist, missed a number of games, came back, hurt his shoulder, which I think people forget as well. So the injuries kind of played into it as well. But on this team right now, just as a pure pass rusher, I don't want to go that far. You could argue he's the best pure pass rusher because Nolan was better, but he did it for a short period of time. Not that he did it for a longer period of time, just a long period of time, just a longer period of time. But he's a one-trick pony. I've made the comparison that he's a reliever. He's a closer in baseball versus the starter with 4 pitches. And Vic wants the guy with 4 pitches.
Right.
Which is fine, but until you find that guy, utilize what you have. That's my argument. But it was pretty clear. It works both ways. He was disappointed and upset the way things went, so he didn't want to be here. And when you get to that point where you got a defensive coordinator that doesn't want the guy, and he doesn't want to be here, it's probably best to tear the Band-Aid off, which is what the Eagles did. So for that, I give them credit for. But in a perfect world, which it's not, he could have helped. But not in the non-perfect world of what was set up here in Philadelphia, he was not going to be able to help. So it's kind of I'm not criticizing the question, but it's kind of like he's going to help San Francisco. He is. He is. Very confident in saying that. He is.
Well, Saleh did get double-digit sacks out of him twice, I believe.
Yeah.
So
very upset when he left, wanted to keep him. And remember, they have big-time pass rushers. They have first-round picks, and Saleh wanted to keep him. He's gonna help San Francisco. But I'm not going to criticize the Eagles when he does help San Francisco because he wasn't going to do the same thing here. That's another thing that I think fans, again, I try to point out, no vacuums. Each situation is different. Most notable with quarterbacks. If quarterbacks are in a shitty situation, they're screwed. Well, the same thing with other players. And he's now going to be in a situation that will take advantage of what he does well. So he's probably going to look better. In a situation where you're looking for set the edge, be a flat defender in coverage, and go rush the passer. Not a good fit. Not a good fit.
Man, it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I got some questions on Jahad Campbell here. Now, John, a lot of pushback on what you're saying here in the chat, which is common. All right, and that's okay. But I do want to address one thing and just your take on it.
It is common.
Brandon Howard says, number 1 defense, and you're criticizing Vic's decision-making. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what you did. I didn't really take it that way.
First of all, I have lauded Vic Fangio day in and day out. I've called him the best defensive coordinator. He is not a god. He is a human being. Howie Roseman. I've said pretty consistently, best general manager in football. That doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. There is not the day there is a coach or a player that I don't question is the day I'm not doing it right, because nobody's perfect. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. Zander does this show with me every day. Am I a Vic Fangio guy, Zander?
Yeah, you're a Vic Fangio guy. That's for sure.
Does that freaking mean I'm going to say he gets 100% right? I just explained it. I get what he wants. All coaches want a certain scheme. They come in with a certain scheme. You know, Kevin Patullo was talking about this when he was asked about, you know, his sort of foundational principles on offense, and he brought up Chan Gailey as being maybe the most important moment of his coaching career. And that was the worst team he was ever on, because they lost their starting quarterback. They lost their backup quarterback. They had to go to Tyler Thigpen. And Chan Gailey, the next day, walked in, and Chan Gailey had a blank whiteboard and said, all right, guys, we got to build a whole new offense to better utilize what Tyler Thigpen could do. And they did a pretty damn good job. Still had a shitty season, but everything went up offensively. And it always stuck with Kevin Patullo. And that's why I love Chan Gailey so much, because it wasn't about, all right, this is what we do. We'll just put Tyler Thigpen in and do exactly what we did before. Same thing happened with the Eagles and John DeFilippo and Frank Reich, and then the shift from Carson Wentz to Nick Foles and the run to Super Bowl 52. That's what good coaches do. They manipulate things to take advantage of the talent they have. Not that they want, believe me, Chan Gailey and everybody else, and Kevin was just a quality control guy at the time, but everybody else in Kansas City didn't want to play Tyler Thigpen. He was the third string quarterback. But they built an offense the best they could to help him, and they did a pretty good job. So everybody's got their template of what they want, but you can't get everything you want at all times. So you got to take advantage of what you have. That's it.
Bryce Huff's officially gone. John, if I put the over-under for him next year at, what do we want to put it at? 6.5 sacks? Is that too high? Is that too low? 6.5 sacks for Bryce Huff in San Francisco. Are you smashing the over on that, Johnny Mac?
I am smashing the over on that. I am smashing, and Eagles fans are going to be pissed by it. But it's not going to.
Would you smash it over if I went 8.5?
No.
Okay,
but I would.
So
I
there's
would.
the sweet spot. 6.5.
I would. I would. It wouldn't shock me. You know, got to see how it. But I mean, Robert Saleh is already. But Robert Saleh loves the guy.
Yeah, he does. He got a lot out of him in New York. Robert Saleh is a good defensive guy too. Very good.
He is. But he uses a different scheme, and he's going to allow him to rush the passer. You know?
Bryce Huff, 7.5 sacks in San Francisco.
Well, the worst thing is if they're in the playoffs and he's getting
on their way to an NFC title game. You got to be kidding me! Holy moly!
That'll go over well, and you're paying them to play for him. That'll go over well. Wait
Eagles,
for those stories.
49ers NFC Championship game this year, and Bryce Hufflepuff will have a nothing burger in that game. We'll see.
Well, he probably will have a nothing burger against the Eagles because
of the tackles. Yeah,
and Jordan Mailata. So you probably don't have to be concerned about that.
Yeah, no.
Out of getting sacks.
All right. So what is your opinion? I'm liking you giving some of your opinions here. I know a lot of times you're reporting, which is all good as well. But what's your opinion on what Jahad Campbell's going to be then this year? Do you see them putting him on the edge and rushing the passer more with Jahad Campbell than you maybe originally thought, or how is your thought process on what he's going to be changed or developed so far this
Well, I
offseason?
mean, it's so difficult with him because he's not healthy, man. We got to see when he's healthy and when
Right.
he's cleared. Because another thing with Vic, he's gonna, and with Cooper, we saw it. He's going to take some time because they're learning, and Jihad's got to learn a bunch of stuff. He's got to learn all ball linebacker. He's got to learn edge rusher. So how quickly is he comfortable throwing them out there? Now, desperation could change that timetable as well. Even though Eagles fans didn't like Avonte Maddox, they were very comfortable. The Eagles were very comfortable with Avonte Maddox as a veteran player who understood the job, understood the role, understood how to play. And now they don't have that type of player. It's more uncertainty. Very young Jalen Hunt, prove it lottery tickets, guys who haven't been here, and Ojulari and Uche. 6th-round pick, if you want to go down to Antoine Powell-Ryland. They don't have that guy who's been, in the NFL, who's been doing it for a long time. So, that might speed it up. But, yeah, I mean, they think he's a playmaker, and they want to get him on the field. And the easiest way to get him on the field, especially if Nakobe's healthy. Nakobe's healthy, so you have 2 moving parts.
Right.
It's easier to get him on the field as a rusher to start because you're only going to play 2 off-ball linebackers, and that's going to be Nakobe and Zach Bond. So it's easier to get him on the field as a rusher.
Right. Nakobe's actually kind of a big catalyst in this. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, same thing though. We have to see when he's healthy. All good. I mean, he's been around. Everybody saw the backwards shot when they went to the Palestra.
Yeah.
He's not wearing a knee brace. He wasn't there. I told people that he wasn't wearing a knee brace at clean out day. Now that doesn't mean he's healthy, but I was shocked by it. And clearly he's not going to be doing anything in the rest of the spring. I doubt he'll be ready at the starters training camp. And, with Jihad, same thing. It's interesting. Both of those injuries, if you just look up, torn labrum, surgery, 6 to 12 months, which is ridiculous. But, the range, you would think an athlete would be closer to 6 months than 12 months, but that's all speculation. Same thing with a patellar, 6 to 12 months. It's like weird in almost the sense, but
right.
And Nakobe certainly seems early in the process, certainly seems to be heading in a positive direction.
Good stuff. We'll see how it all shakes out there. We got a couple of super chats we'll take on this topic, and then I do want to dive into the business of June 1. I know we talked about it a little bit, but I do want to ask John some questions in its own segment about what the moves that the Eagles could make, or if any at all. Jason 18 followed up on his big $50 super chat to start the show. Jason, thank you for the support. He says, it's obvious it's not a good thing, but Howie is one of the few GMs that are able to turn a bad decision and be able to pivot off of it. Thank God. I do agree with him big time on that.
Yeah, that's fair. But, a lot of people were giving him, look at Howie. Look at that. This is not one of Howie's proudest moments.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I will say Howie does have this weird tendency, though, John, when he makes a big miss somewhere, he overcorrects it to the point where it's like unbelievable. Like the wide receiver room, he drafts Jalen Reagor, and now we end up with the top 3 wide receiver room in football. Everybody's chirping him about running backs. He gets Saquon Barkley. Chirping about linebacker, he ends up with Zach Bond, whether he wanted him or not. He does seem to have an ability to overcorrect.
Some of that circumstance. I mean, you bring up the linebacker thing.
Well, that was the most circumstance because
even he admits it. Yeah, he brought him in to be an edge rusher and special teams.
But Saquon, you could say he had the proper foresight on that to be able to see that.
Yeah, certainly that's one where he should get his flowers on, because he was one of the people at the forefront who turned the NFL into what it was when it came to running backs and devaluing running backs. He was one of the guys who fueled that. And then when everybody zigged with him, he zagged and he went back the other way. So he kind of okey doked everybody. So that's one where he deserves a ton of credit on, ton of credit. And wide receiver, yeah, I mean, that was a multi-year thing, and that was just more of, I don't know if we're because if you look at Devontae Smith, they would have drafted a corner if one of the corners drafted. So that was more of, all right, they had 4 guys they really liked. Devontae was the last one on the board, right, and they went up to go get him. And then, of course, AJ's just a good player. So, I mean, in general, because you're dealing with all.
Yeah, AJ's just a good player, but they didn't have to trade for him to draft after they took Devontae Smith. I mean,
they didn't have to.
It was like, I'm making wide receiver a strength on this football team.
But that to me was just a good evaluation as opposed to a bad evaluation, and willing to pay him the money on top of it, which turned out to be a bargain. But at the time, people were like, "Wow, look at the contract." So yeah, he deserves credit for that. But circumstances, a lot of it, because you're dealing with 31 other, especially in the draft. I mean, very rarely, unless you're picking number 1, very rarely are you going to get the player you really wanted. Very rarely. And how well do you deal with that? And they did a very good job with Devontae.
Yep, no doubt about it. Let's go to the next super chat here. 2 more, then we'll get to our commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk June 1. We'll talk OTAs. We'll talk a little more Jahad Campbell, even some Tanner McKee talk. His name's out there a bunch right now. Tyler Conger checks in. What's up, Tyler? Good to see you, brother. Appreciate you being here. He says, morning, fellas. Making the trip from Vermont to the Link for Eagles-Rams for my first Birds game. I'm super pumped. Any suggestions on things to see and do while I'm there? Go Birds. Well, I'd say go to Angelo's and grab yourself a cheesesteak, and then get yourself some fine dining too, not just a cheesesteak. You got to get some good food too. Good.
You go to Skinny Joey's now. It's right down the street.
Yeah. I got Skinny Joey's. It was pretty good.
Did you?
It's pretty good. I don't want to say anything bad about it because I want to.
No, well, either I. I'm not planning on again. But when I go to the Novacare, I pass Skinny Joey's every day, and it's packed every day. And I'm like, I want to go, but I don't want to wait in that line.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't too bad. I went on a weekday, midday, and it wasn't too bad. But the line has been pretty big there, for sure. I like Angelo's a little more still. I'll say that. All right. I know they're beefing right now.
Well, Angelo's number 1. Angelo's going to get whacked, but I'm joking. Bradley Cooper.
I don't know, joking or not, we'll see. JH checks in. But John, any other suggestions for Tyler on Philly? I would recommend.
Well, I mean, the sports complex, for those who are coming from outside the area, there's not a ton of stuff down by there's obviously Xfinity Live, so there's a little bit.
Yeah, right. But get to Center City, get to the
you have to go out of the area if you want really stuff to do, because there's not if you just want to hang out at Xfinity Live, that's about it. Navy Yard's pretty cool. You can go down there. That's pretty close. But there's not a ton of stuff. It's basically the Wells Fargo Center, Lincoln Financial Field, across the street, Citizens Bank Park. So, it's just a big complex of sports buildings. So, but there's plenty to see, obviously, in Center City, and history-wise, everything-wise, restaurants, But, I would head down that way.
Yeah. Jim's on South Street. Zeal. That was one of my all-time favorite places to go growing up. Jim's on South, but it did burn down a couple of years ago. It's all back and good now, though. So that's a good spot as well if you get to South Street. But I recommend Center City. It's always cool. So it's a cool city. JH checks in. After this trade, how many picks do we have in 26? Feels like a lot.
I don't have it in front of me, but they have a lot. I think the number was 20 total over the next 2 years. But that, remember, it fluctuates depending on compensatory picks as well. But yeah, they'll be getting another pick. So that's one of the reasons why, that's good for future moves as well when you have to, sort of throw in draft picks. So to have more of them gives you just more, going to use a Sam Hinkie word, more optionality. And they have plenty of that over the next number of years. But let's see, they have their own first round pick, own second round pick. They got 3 third round picks with the projected comp pick for Milton Williams. They got 2 fourth round picks with the projected comp pick for Josh Sweat. They got 4 fifth round picks with the projected comp pick for Mekhi Becton and their own 7th round pick. I'm guessing this is another 5th round pick, which would make it 5. So yeah, they have plenty of draft picks.
Good stuff there, JH. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate everybody being here. John, look at this big crowd, man, for a 10 a.m. edition of Birds 365. We thought, hey, maybe our viewership won't be as big because people are so used to us at 8, but we got plenty of people in here watching. We appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in to us daily here on Birds 365 all through the offseason. Hit that like button for us. It's the number one thing you can do to help us grow. And then also subscribe to the channel. Consider becoming a member if you want to financially support the show. That helps a lot, and we appreciate that. And then super chats as well help a lot. So we appreciate all of the great people for their support. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and I want you guys to pay attention in the commercial. The Wildwoods is back, and I know a lot of you guys love those spots. So Wildwoods is back to sponsor us for the summer, and we appreciate their support. So check out the stop set coming up. We'll be right back in 3 minutes, everybody.